What's going on, everybody? I am going to show you the mix I did for a song I wrote called Gone, and it's a song I wrote about my self-respect a long time ago. But anyways, we're going to kind of get into it. It's not really that complicated a mix. I like to keep it pretty simple for the most part. It's 24 tracks, and 10 of those are actually the drum kit. And interestingly enough, if you listen to the video, which you got to listen to the song first, I mean, come on. The drums are not really that prominently involved in the mix. So like, here's part of it. So the first mix I did on this, the drums were up a lot more, but they were really masking the guitars. And even if I tried like EQing it, it wasn't really totally working for me. So I kind of brought the drums a lot lower in the mix so the guitars would have a lot going on. But what I did, because then the drums kind of just totally disappeared. So I kind of did this thing that's kind of similar to parallel compression, if you've ever heard of that. But essentially how I ended up dealing with it is I had one room mic on the kit. So like if you just like listen to like the drums as a whole, you can tell there's kind of like a lo-fi type vibe going on, and a lot of that is just this one track right here, which is just a room mic that I put a Native Instruments LA2A style compressor on and really cranked the gain like way, way up. So if you just listen to that one track, you can tell it's like kind of distorted. Like without the compression, it's like super weak, right? So now if you listen to the kit, without that parallel compression, I mean, it's not really parallel compression, I just kind of took a room track and like kind of smashed it. So here's the actual drum track. And then without that one room mic with the compressor on it, it just sounds kind of like more like a regular kit. I mean, definitely a lot darker because the overheads I kind of had way, way down. But anyways, I thought it kind of imparted like a cool lo-fi retro sound, or whatever you want to call it. And what I really wanted to do is just kind of get the guitars, to make it a guitar song, to have the guitars kind of going up pretty high in the mix. So on the topic of guitars, the intro sounds like this, right? It's got one kind of synth going on. Let's see here, where is it? Oh. So here's the synth at the beginning. So that right there is 4 tracks. There's a synth from one of my favorite virtual or soft synths ever, which is Absynth by Native Instruments. I mean, really, just get Absynth and just screw around. You're always going to find like something that you can find like useful as far as ambience and stuff like that goes. And then I have the electric guitar with 2 microphones on here, right? So, and if you see here, I have a gain plugin on one of the channel strips because, and this happens to me all the time, it sounded pretty good like while I was recording it. But then when I was listening to it, it sounded kind of weird. And what that usually means when you're using 2 microphones is something is out of phase. So one of these tracks ended up being kind of out of phase. So the cool thing about this gain plugin is you can invert the phase on one. So just to kind of give you an example of what that sounds like, I'll loop this. So here's how it originally sounded. Which I don't know if it's coming through in the microphones or not, but it kind of sounded weird to me, so I inverted the phase. And that kind of opened it up, right? And that was more representative of the sound I was hearing in the room when I was tracking it. So if you record something with multiple microphones and it sounds weird, could very well be a phase problem. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can zoom in and kind of just move it so the frequencies line up, they don't cancel each other out. Or you can put a gain plugin on it, like I ended up doing there. And the other thing I did was I added an acoustic guitar, just kind of like heavily muted. Just because I kind of wanted to, it just kind of felt too lonely in the mix early on. So I kind of had to give it a little partner, so I did the same thing on acoustic guitar. And then if you'll notice, after the intro, those guitars go away. And they make room for the whole thing.
The season when winds don't change.
if you listen to it, you can hear that after that intro, the guitar is kind of spread open left and right because it's actually double tracked. One of them is with the Ernie Ball Music Man on the left, and the other one is the Strat on the right through pretty much the same amp settings, the Mesa Boogie, which I had mic'd up with the Audix i5 into the Universal Audio 4710 preamp. So it's really just those two guitar tracks for the most part that last the duration of the song. And aside from that, I also have the bass double tracked. And it's actually not double tracked. I was using my Rickenbacker 4003, and it has this kind of like stereo output thing. So I had one output running into the 1176 and the other output running into the Twinfinity, the Universal Audio Twinfinity. And it kind of gave it like a nice, you know, best of both worlds. The cool thing about the stereo is like it outputs the neck pickup and the bridge pickup separately, so you can kind of have more options after the fact. So that's how I did the bass. And then again, like I said, the guitars are just kind of like a couple of guitars until you get to the very, very end. I kind of did the same line, but I did it an octave higher. So all three guitars now sound like that, okay? So I think it's just one of those things that there's only two parts to the song, like a verse and a chorus. So I didn't want it to get too repetitive, even though it's only like a 3-minute song. So the last time around, I added like an octave up guitar. The only other really interesting thing about this is probably, well, the vocals. Okay, so my absolute favorite plugin of all time has got to be the Waves Kramer tape. And I have it pretty much on like all my mixes, all my vocals. It's definitely a huge advantage to me. I feel like it always sounds better. Like for example, here's just the vocal thing. I'll kind of isolate it. Season when winds don't change, I find myself face down and jied out. Now if I took the Kramer tape off of it, in the season when the winds don't change, I find myself face down and jied out, sorting out the bruises from the breaks. So it definitely kind of adds like a top end to it, which is technically like a tape distortion emulation. So I'm a huge fan of the Kramer master tape. I think definitely the cool thing is I'm pretty sure you can like demo it. Believe it or not, I actually bought it. I bought a plugin. Oh my god, it's so crazy. But definitely I think you can like download it from Waves and like demo it for like a week or 2 weeks or a month or something like that. Highly suggest you try the Kramer tape out, because I use it on a lot of different things, and it's helped me out a lot. As you can see, kind of like on the channel strips on here, like there's not a lot going on. I've got the two gain things here just because the guitar solo, I also had double track with the same setup. I kind of had that spaced out reverb style just to kind of give it its own etherealness to it. Yeah, but really other than just the gain plugin to get it in phase and the reverb, there's really nothing on any of the guitars. And the only other instrumentation part is actually the Moog Sub Phatty I have in the guitar solo part, which is just nasty. I freaking love that thing. It's amazing. Let's see. So it kind of takes over for like a bass part and adds that kind of melody line that goes through the chorus, where it's like if you're not really listening to it, you almost can't totally hear it. But at the end, it's actually really cool. So that thing right there is just like an oscillator on the Sub Phatty that you can kind of like manually adjust to kind of like, I think it's like a good thing that you can do to kind of like add in a transitional thing. Like, so this part of the song, after that, at the end of the guitar solo. So a combination of the Moog and the snare kind of roll, kind of like build like an anticipation, ending one part and starting a new part. And again, that's just all just an analog synth that you can kind of like use one of the oscillators to kind of speed up the sound of like the delay or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so most of the mics are on the kit, which is almost a waste because I kind of just crushed the whole thing anyways and just kind of had it sit in there with that parallel compression type thing. And then double track guitars, solo, stereo tracked bass, and then the Absynth plugin for the intro synth part. And essentially, that is pretty much everything you're hearing. A little bit of EQ stuff. Again, on the vocal 2, I had the Native Instruments passive EQ, which is another one that I use on the mix bus a lot too, if like I'm going to master it myself. Again, the Native Instruments stuff I think is like really fantastic, and people don't talk about it enough. And on the bass, I put the solid EQ, also from Native Instruments, on there. So really just a couple stock plugins, a couple Native Instruments ones, and then the main one. Oh, also too, on the vocals, I had the RC24 reverb going on. Which for vocals, I kind of like the Native Instrument reverb more. Space Designer and Logic, I kind of like for a lot of stuff, but that's more of like a creative thing. I just think the RC24 Native Instruments reverb sounds a little bit better. But yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully you like the track. Maybe you learned what not to do in a mix. Like, again, I'm like no expert by any stretch of the imagination. This is just kind of how I do it. And a lot of you guys asked for how I did things, so hopefully it was helpful to you. Thanks a lot.